Imagine looking up at the night sky and seeing the brightest planet in our solar system. Not the biggest, not the farthest, just the brightest. It looks calm, beautiful, even. For thousands of years, people admired it. They gave it names, myths, and meaning. It was the morning star, the evening star, a symbol of beauty. And that is exactly what makes Venus so disturbing, because the most terrifying things are not always the ones that look dangerous. Sometimes the real nightmare is the one that shines from a distance and hides what it really is. Venus is often called Earth's twin. It's almost the same size. Its mass is similar. It formed in the same inner part of the solar system, from roughly the same material, under the same young sun. On paper, it sounds familiar, like a second Earth, a neighboring world that should have made sense to us. But Venus is not Earth's twin. It is Earth's warning. This is a planet where the atmosphere is so thick that standing on the surface would feel like being deep underwater. A planet so hot it can melt lead. A planet where the pressure alone is enough to crush the machines we send there. And the unsettling part is that Venus may not have started like this. Some scientists believe it may once have had far more temperate conditions, perhaps even oceans. If that idea is true, then Venus is not just a hostile planet. It is the remains of a world that crossed the line and never came back. That possibility changes everything, because then Venus is not simply a dead world. It is a planetary catastrophe. From space, Venus looks strangely elegant. It's wrapped in thick clouds that reflect sunlight so well that it becomes the brightest planet in our sky. Those clouds are smooth, pale, and almost peaceful. But they hide nearly everything. You cannot see the surface with normal visible light. Venus keeps itself covered behind a permanent veil. It does not show you the plains, the volcanic scars, the shattered rock, or the heat below. It hides the violence, and beneath those clouds is one of the harshest environments anywhere in the solar system. The surface temperature on Venus is around 465 degrees Celsius. Not at noon, not in one unlucky region. Everywhere, all the time. Mercury is closer to the sun, yet Venus is hotter. That should tell you immediately that something has gone terribly wrong. Mercury has almost no atmosphere, so it heats up fast and cools down fast. Venus did the opposite. Venus built a trap. Its atmosphere is mostly carbon dioxide, and that thick blanket holds heat so effectively that the planet turned into a furnace. Sunlight gets in, heat stays in. This is what a runaway greenhouse effect looks like on a planetary scale. Venus is not just warm, it is locked inside its own atmosphere. And once you understand that, the planet starts to feel less like a world and more like a warning, frozen in place. The pressure on the surface is about 92 times greater than on Earth. On our planet, air feels invisible. On Venus, the atmosphere would feel heavy, almost physical. It would press on you from every direction, relentless, crushing, present. The atmosphere there is not just weather, it is an active force. And that force has beaten us again and again. The Soviet Venera missions were some of the boldest space missions ever attempted. These probes were built like armored machines, designed to survive conditions that sound almost impossible. Some of them actually reached the surface. A few even sent back pictures. Grainy, eerie images of a dim orange world, covered in rock and silence. But they did not last long. Some survived only minutes. A few managed a little longer, then they died. That is what Venus does. It destroys our presence almost as soon as we arrive. Think about that. We have sent rovers to Mars for years. We have visited asteroids, comets, and the outer planets. But one of the closest planets to Earth remains one of the hardest places for our technology to survive, even briefly. It is close enough to see, close enough to reach, and still so hostile that it feels almost untouchable. And Venus has more ways to kill than heat and pressure alone. Its clouds contain sulfuric acid. The sky itself is chemically hostile. This is not a world with drifting water clouds and changing weather. This is a world wrapped in corrosive chemistry. Even the air feels wrong. And yet, high above the surface, Venus becomes strangely more manageable. Not safe, but less extreme. In parts of the upper atmosphere, temperatures and pressures are far closer to Earth-like conditions than the actual ground below. That is one of the strangest things about Venus. On most planets, survival means getting down to the surface. On Venus, the ground is the nightmare. The clouds are, in some ways, less deadly than the land beneath them. That reversal makes Venus feel deeply unnatural. Then there is the way the planet moves. A day on Venus is longer than a year on Venus. It takes about 243 Earth days to rotate once, but only about 225 Earth days to go around the Sun. In other words, Venus finishes its year before it finishes a single full day, and it rotates backward compared to most planets in the solar system. On Venus, the sun would rise in the west and set in the east. Even time behaves strangely there. This matters more than it seems. We feel comfortable with worlds that follow patterns we recognize. Day and night, sunrise and sunset, rhythms that make sense. Venus resists that. It moves like a world out of step with the rest of the solar system. And then there is the surface itself. Venus is not just a flat plain under a burning sky. It has mountains, giant volcanic features, deformed terrain, and vast regions that may have been resurfaced by ancient volcanic activity. Some scientists suspect that Venus does not release internal heat as gradually as Earth does. Instead, it may build that heat up over long periods and release it in more catastrophic episodes. If that is true, Venus may not simply be a dead world. It may be a world that resets itself through fire. There is even growing evidence that Venus may still be volcanically active today. If that is confirmed, then Venus is not only the remains of an ancient disaster, it is a planet that may still be changing right now. That makes it even worse, because a world this hot, this pressurized, this chemically aggressive, and possibly still geologically active is not just hostile, it is alive in the worst possible way. But what makes Venus truly terrifying is not any one feature on its own. It is the combination of all of them. The heat, the pressure, the acid clouds, the strange rotation, the hidden surface, the possibility of ancient oceans, the chance that it may still be volcanically active. Layer by layer, Venus stops feeling like a simple planet and starts feeling like a full-scale environmental collapse turned into a world. That is why Venus matters so much to science. Not because Earth is about to become Venus overnight. That is not how planetary science works. And the two worlds are not identical. But Venus shows what can happen when a planet's atmosphere crosses a threshold and can no longer regulate heat in a stable way. It shows that habitability is fragile, and that idea should stay with you. Because Earth and Venus are not random opposites, they are similar enough to make the difference between them unsettling. They are close in size, close in composition, close in the region where they formed. If you knew nothing else, you might expect them to have ended up far more alike. Instead, one became a world of oceans and life. The other became a pressure cooker wrapped in acid clouds. That betrayal of expectation is part of what makes Venus frightening. Jupiter is obviously extreme. Neptune is obviously remote. But Venus feels like it should have been familiar. It should have made sense. It didn't. And when a planet so similar to Earth, in basic structure, ends up this far from anything human, it forces a difficult question into your mind. How narrow is the line between a habitable world and a ruined one? Venus may hold part of that answer. That is why future missions matter. NASA's DAVINCI mission aims to study Venus's atmosphere in far greater detail. VERITAS is expected to map its surface and geology with much better precision. Europe's EnVision mission will push that understanding even further. Humanity keeps going back to Venus in theory and planning because the planet refuses to stop mattering. The more disturbing Venus becomes, the more important it is to understand. Because this is not just about one world next door. It is about how planets evolve, why some remain stable, why others fall apart, why a rocky planet with familiar ingredients can become something utterly hostile. And this matters far beyond our solar system. When we discover rocky exoplanets around distant stars, one of the biggest questions is whether they are more like Earth or more like Venus. A planet can be the right size and still become a nightmare. It can sit in a promising place and still end in ruin. Venus reminds us that appearance is not enough. Brightness is not safety. Similarity is not destiny. And a planet that looks beautiful from far away can be merciless up close. So what does all of this mean for us? It means the most terrifying planet is not always the one that looks the most dramatic. It means danger can wear a beautiful face. It means a world can stay close to Earth in size, shape, and origin, and still end up completely unrecognizable. Venus terrifies because it feels like a near miss, not a giant monster at the edge of the solar system, not some frozen alien rock in deep darkness. A near miss, a planet that almost feels familiar until you understand what it became. When we look at Jupiter, we see power. When we look at Saturn, we see majesty. But when we look at Venus, we may be looking at something more unsettling than either of them. A world that may once have had the ingredients for something gentler, and then lost it all. A world that proves planets can fall. A world that shines beautifully in the sky, while hiding one of the most unforgiving surfaces we have ever studied. And maybe that is the most disturbing part of all. Venus does not look like a warning, it looks like a light. But beneath that brightness is crushing pressure, endless heat, toxic clouds, and the possibility that this planet was not always a nightmare, which means Venus is not just terrifying because of what it is. It is terrifying because of what it might have been. And because once a world crosses certain lines, there may be no way back. The brightest planet in our sky is not a symbol of peace. It is a reminder. Worlds can change, worlds can collapse, worlds can become unrecognizable, and sometimes the most beautiful thing you can see in the darkness is not a promise. It is a warning.